How could the government be so callous? Many of us who had just gathered inside the Great Hall had taken part in student movements when we were young. So why were we treating the students this way now?
During those early days of the student movement, we pleaded with the authorities, petitioned them like loyal subjects in traditional China. At first, we made direct appeals. Then we pleaded with tears and on bended knee. Yes, we were even willing to kneel down before them, like subjects petitioning the emperor. We had to beg them to come out and talk to us. But then again, it's fair to say that the government virtually crumbled under the weight of our knees.
What the students were opposing now were the very same things we had opposed in our youth. Why had we turned into a party which was against the people and the students? This was not the same Communist Party I had once joined.
Good evening. Thousands of Chinese students took to the streets today in defiance of a government ban on public protests. The students' chant was for democracy, their demands for political reform. The backdrop was a memorial service for fallen leader Hu Yaobang.
I was in New York at the time. This sort of news was on television and in the papers every day. When friends got together, all we talked about were these events. The TV images affected me deeply. I thought, what's the use of getting all worked up about it if you're so far away? I had to go back. So I got on a plane leaving New York on April 26th. When I was changing planes in Tokyo, I met someone who had just come from China. He said, "What do you think you can do back there? Haven't you heard about the editorial that just appeared? It calls the movement a plot by a small handful to instigate anti-party, anti-state Dongluan."
Dongluan, turmoil, upheaval, chaos. A People's Daily editorial denounced the demonstrations. "We must unequivocally oppose Dongluan," the headline read. Such an editorial, appearing in the official Communist Party media, amounted to a charge of criminal conspiracy.
It was dangerous for me to go back. I even asked about flights returning to New York. But then I heard the boarding announcement for my flight to Beijing. I didn't have time to hesitate. I had to get on that plane. I thought, what the heck? Live or die, I'll just go.
With the April 26th editorial, the government took a firm stand against the student movement. The Communist Party has a tradition of passing judgment on social incidents through the media. In the past, Mao had written quite a few People's Daily editorials himself. He launched a number of mass political persecutions this way. That's why when the April 26th editorial came out, people assumed that it represented Deng's attitude toward the student demonstrations. Everyone expected that the government would crack down on any new demonstrations.
We were very angry. What petty minds. These people in the government have gone completely haywire. Just listen to what they're saying. It sounds like the Cultural Revolution all over again. The mindset, even the words, were identical to the editorial which came out after the Tiananmen incident of 1976. We all lived through that episode, and we know how that ended up.
The editorial of April 26th reminded many people of what happened after another great state funeral, the events of 1976, known to everyone as the Tiananmen incident. In January of 1976, Premier Zhou Enlai, Mao's close associate, one of the great heroes of the revolution, died.
The people of the capital could not restrain their bitter grief. They left their homes and gathered on the sidewalks of the Chang'an Boulevard, along which the cortege would pass.
Zhou was widely regarded as a moderate, more humane and tolerant than other top leaders. Just as the mourning for Hu Yabong in 1989 was the occasion for protest, the outpouring of grief for Zhou Enlai was a reproach to the hardliners in power.
Can't you stop for a moment, dear Premier? This is Tiananmen. Don't you remember the many festive occasions we celebrated here together? Your ringing laughter is still in our ears. Your warm gaze rests on our tears. Beloved Premier Zhou, how we miss you, how we need you.
The times when important leaders die are dangerous. Zhou Enlai was a mentor of Deng Xiaoping. He helped bring Deng back into government to counter the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. Deng gave the eulogy at Zhou's funeral. But the events following Zhou's death would once again bring Deng Xiaoping down. That April, during the traditional festival in honor of the dead, thousands of people gathered spontaneously in Tiananmen Square to lay wreaths in honor of Zhou Enlai. They read poems, gave speeches. Reports made to Mao said the agitation was really directed against him. Police removed the wreaths, but people brought more. Police ordered the crowds to disperse. The crowds overturned a police van and set it afire. At last, Mao took action. Workers armed with clubs were sent in. There were beatings and arrests. In the official press, the events in the square were denounced as counter-revolutionary violence inspired by a small handful of conspirators. The alleged mastermind behind the turmoil was that unrepentant reactionary, Deng Xiaoping. Deng was denounced, condemned, forced from power. Not until after Mao's death would he emerge as China's new paramount leader. Then, the verdict on the 1976 upheavals would be reversed. The scenes in Tiananmen Square would be replayed with a different meaning. They became courageous demonstrations of the people's will. And yet now, in 1989, the government of Deng Xiaoping, faced again with protests inspired by the death of a leader, reached for the old words of denunciation. Once again, the supreme leader heard reports that the agitation was directed against him. Once again, a small handful of conspirators were supposedly plotting to bring down the state. Once again, the irrevocable judgment was passed.
The editorial of April 26th caught the students by total surprise. We didn't expect that the government would jump to such a vicious conclusion about us. We felt that without large-scale street action, we couldn't compete with the propaganda machine of the government, and the people wouldn't know the truth about what we were doing.
The Chinese